You'll never build wealth and freedom if you ignore this. Most people aren't broke because of one bad decision. They're broke because of silent wealth killers that they don't even realize are draining them in the background. I've personally built my wealth with a $30 million painting business by avoiding the traps that sabotage 99% of entrepreneurs. And today I'm going to share with you the top 7 to watch out for so you can get rich and stay rich. Most people ignore this, but it's easily the biggest roadblock to achieving your financial goals. A few years ago, I was listening to a podcast with Naval Ravikant, and on that podcast, he said something like, if my name is ever on the side of a hospital wing, I overshot. And I don't know exactly what he meant for him, but for me, I heard that as if I've ever made so much wealth that I'm donating hospital wings, I've overshot in the domain of money. I made too much of my life about making money. And for me, I heard that and I was in the process of figuring out for myself, like, what do I really want with money and wealth in my life? And for me, I don't want to overshoot on money and undershoot with my kids or my family. As we grow our business and as we make more money, there's such a tendency to always want more. As I make more, I buy more. As I buy more, I need to make more. And as I make more and buy more, I want more. And this cycle of it never being enough is not the way that I wanted to live my life. So a couple years ago, I was talking with my business partner, Hunter, and I said, how much money do you want to make per year? Like, what's your number? And he said, 2 million. I said, why? Why 2 million? And he thought about it for a second and he said, I don't actually know. It's just the kind of number I pulled out of the air. And I said, well, what you might want to do is start thinking about what's the dream life you want to live? What do you actually want in life? The whole point of money is to fulfill your intentions in the other areas of your life, to give you the kind of resources you need to live true to what matters to you in your whole life. What's the house you want to live in? Do you want another house? How much is that going to cost? What car do you want to drive? How much do you want to spend on food and going out? How much flexibility do you want with spending? Vacations you want to take? Lifestyle you want? And how much do you want to save? Like, what would make you comfortable? Because there is a number when you envision your dream life. There's a number. So you don't get just caught up in this never enough, always needing more perpetual cycle, the hedonic treadmill of it never being enough. So the first step to building real wealth isn't about making an insane amount of money. It's about defining what wealth is in your life. And I've done this with dozens of people at this point to say, what is your number that will give you a wealthy life? Because it's not just about money. Money is there to support the life you want. So you start by defining what wealth is for you. In my experience is that wealth means something different to everyone, and it starts by defining what it means to you. You'll never get rich trying to save money. So if you're not doing this, it's nearly impossible to build wealth. The way our society basically works right now is it's nearly impossible to build wealth as an employee. If you're an employee, you have limited upside. There's only so much money that you can make per year. And for most people, that dream wealth number, you can't get to as an employee. And so you have to work and save. And eventually in 20 or 30 years, if you've saved enough and worked enough, eventually you get there. That's not what I see as a wealthy life. When you start to map out your dream life, it's not a 20 or 30 years from now kind of thing. In order to build wealth, you need to be tied in to equity. You have to be tied into profit sharing because in today's society, that's where you build wealth. But you don't have to start your own business. You don't have to be the only business owner. And for a lot of people, it doesn't make sense. But in some ways, you have to be tied in to the upside of a business. And so the goal is through your career and through your work, finding ways and finding companies where you can be tied in to equity. You can be tied in to profit sharing. You can be tied in to owning something, because owning something is the key to building wealth and to getting to the number that you need to get to. The wealthiest people in the world all avoid this one bad habit. So in 2016, my business partner Ben and I, we made the stupidest decision that we've ever made in business. And we launched 9 new companies in 2016. 8 of those businesses we closed by August, and it was a brutal year. We had built a decent business and we said, hey, let's take this business and now let's just go launch 100 of them. We know we can scale $1 million company. Let's go launch 100. We'll have a $100 million business. We were trying to force growth before it was ready. And that's why we failed brutally. We didn't have the infrastructure. We didn't have the model. We just weren't ready, but we were trying to force growth on top of a shaky infrastructure. It ended up being one of the best things that ever happened to us because it completely changed our approach to building our company. We said, hey, we're not going to build $100 million companies. We're going to go really deep and we're going to build this right. And we're going to build a $10 million model. And then we can start to expand and add locations and grow that way. And that is going to be a much healthier path. Problem is it took a lot longer. So from 2017 to to 2020, we just worked on building a better business. And by 2020, we said, hey, we're almost there. In one more year, we're going to have this down and we can scale. And it wasn't 1 year. It wasn't 2 years. It wasn't 3 years. It took us till 2023 before we said, hey, we actually have the $10 million model built now. We're ready to grow and scale. Great things take time to build. And if you want to build wealth, you have to build great things. Daniel Kahneman is a Nobel Prize winning behavioral economist who wrote the book, Thinking Fast and Slow. And in his book, he talks about one particular bias called the inside view bias. The inside view bias basically says, we think things are gonna happen faster than they'll think. So him and his team were writing a book. They wanted to write a textbook for the University of Jerusalem on judgment and decision making. And they said, we think it'll take us 2 years. So they went and asked the dean, how long do these textbooks usually take? And the dean said, they usually take 7 years, but most people never finish them. So they took that information back to the team and they're like, well, let's reevaluate our timeline. And they said, no, we think we can do it in 2 years. By the way, these are the people who are masters of decisions and poor judgment and the biases there. And the textbook ended up taking 7 years. By the time they were done with it, the university didn't want the textbook anymore. So the lesson here is that building something great is going to take time. It's going to take longer than you think it's going to take. And when you try to force the outcome and you try to force the growth before it's ready, you break it. You break the thing you're trying to build and you go back to square one. So for Ben and I, that's what happened. We tried to force the growth and it cost us multiple years because we had to go back and start over at the beginning anyways. So the biggest mistake you could make to building wealth is to be impatient. If you're not investing in the number one asset in your life, you are losing so much money. In 2017, I did a workshop with a company called Wealth Factory, and the guy who started that is named Garrett Gunderson, who has multiple best-selling books. His first big one was called Killing Sacred Cows. This workshop was for entrepreneurs who are making a lot of money and how to build wealth. How do you manage wealth as an entrepreneur? And he has one thing he talks about called investor DNA. He says, as an entrepreneur, you should invest in certain things. The everyday advice for investing is to invest in a lot of things and diversify your portfolio. But as an entrepreneur, you have an opportunity to invest in places that get you massively outsized returns. You should invest in things that you know. You should invest in things that you can influence, and you should invest in things that you are interested in, because when you can invest in those things, you have more say about the outcome. And so the best place for most entrepreneurs to invest is in their own business. If I go and invest in the latest crypto craze, which is hard for me to not want to do because you see all the headlines, I might put in $50,000 and at the end of the year have $100,000 and be able to take that money out, or I can take out the $50,000, or I can go and I can invest in my business. I can build leverage, I can build systems, I can hire people to grow the business. And oftentimes those investments into my own business can get me a 50 to 100% return year over year, because I can grow the business by $50,000 a year with a $50,000 investment. Investing in building my own company will get me far more returns than I can get from the stock market or other things that are outside of my domain of expertise or influence. But most people massively, massively underinvest in their business, the vehicle that actually drives all of their wealth. We've all seen the charts that a financial planner lays out there that shows, hey, if you get this 8% return every year, look at what happens in 30 years. You'll never build the wealth you want in the future if you're not doing this today. I'm gonna read you the tale of the 3 stonecutters. A man was walking down the street and he saw 3 stonecutters. Curious, he asked the first one, "What are you doing?" "I'm doing this to get a paycheck," was his response. Coming upon the second, he asked the same question. "I'm creating the most beautiful stones. Look at how perfectly they're polished. The corners are perfectly rounded, and each one is perfectly shaped. My goal is to be the best stonecutter in the world." Impressed, the man asked the third stonecutter. His response was, "I'm building a cathedral. My goal is to create a place where the community will come together to worship." The lesson here is the context in which you're doing your work. I often ask some of my business partners, when do you build your $10 million company? When does it actually happen? Does building a $10 million company happen on April 27th, 2026? Does it happen next week? week, like, when is building your future happening? And it is happening right now. It is happening in the work you are doing today. It is happening moment by moment by moment. All of the results you produce in your life are just the sum of all of the little things you did moment to moment, day to day, stacked together and compounded over time. But how you show up matters. I'm not out there knocking on doors. I'm out there building my $10 million company. I'm out there building my future for my business. With so many of my coaching clients, I see this happening, and I try to continue to drive home the point of, look, this is the next thing that needs to happen in your business. And until you solve that thing or do that thing, it will be the thing that's holding you back. So you have to remember why you're doing what you're doing, and you have to be willing to do the work that needs to be done. Who can choose to do the work that needs to be done, because every step you take, whether you like it or not, is building a brick in the cathedral you're building. And if you can keep that focus in mind and do the work that needs to be done, that's what's going to get you where you're trying to go, and it will get you there faster. The worst wealth killer of all, something people think is beneficial. Back in 2015, I was running 3 different companies. We had our painting portfolio, National Painting Group, where we were operating a number of painting companies. I was running a lead generation marketing company for painting contractors, and I had a coaching company for painting contractors. I was running these 3 businesses, and I thought that was smart. I thought it was really cool. How exciting. I got kudos and pats on the back from people all the time. How cool. You have 3 businesses. Like, awesome. And I just thought it was the right thing to do. And I remember someone much smarter than me, much wiser than me, and much more successful than me saying, you shouldn't be doing that, dude. When you chase 2 rabbits, you catch none. And you know what I thought? As a late 20-something arrogant kid, I thought, you're wrong. I'm right. I'm going to do it anyway. Watch me. There's something different. I've got this figured out. And I proceeded down that path for a few more years until the pain was enough to make the change. And in 2019 or 20, I had an opportunity to exit one of those companies. The offer was, hey, if you want to just walk away, I'll just take over running it. And I said, yep, done. And I lost $200,000 making that decision. And I did it in an instant because I had learned that it was so much more valuable for me to be focused on one thing, not 3 things. For the next 3 years, it took me a few years to actually remove myself from my portfolio of companies and install the leadership team so that I'm not accountable for that one, so I can focus on one thing at a time. This mistake of spreading myself so thin took me at least 5 years to climb out of the overcommitment I was in. And that's when the real growth started to happen in our business, was when we didn't have problems everywhere because we were focused enough. We live in a society that celebrates diversification. It celebrates multiple income streams. There's even things, oh, the average millionaire has 7 income streams, so I should go have 7 income streams. But the reality is that greatest wealth gets built at the tail end of the thing you're building. And that's where all the juice is at the tail end. And so if I can focus on one thing for an extended period of time, I can create far more wealth and success by doing one thing than by doing a bunch of things. The key is to focus. And I know that if I could go back in time, I would be multiple years, 5, 6 years ahead of where I am now if I would have just focused, and I would have made a lot more money along the way. Finally, avoid this trap to make sure you break free and create real wealth. Just recently, I was talking with a painting contractor who runs a $3 to $4 million business, and he was looking for his next thing. And he was talking to me because he was considering doing something like what we're doing, where I'm opening more locations and expanding what we're doing. And the advice I told him, that you should just stay focused on the business you're doing. So what happens is when companies get to, in our case, $3 million a year, there's a lot of really hard problems that happen to go from $3 million a year to $10 million a year. Like, they're hard problems to solve. And what a lot of people do is they get to those hard problems, and rather than solving those hard problems, they say, okay, that looks too hard. So instead, let's go start something new. But the new thing is not the best move. The best move is to actually go solve those hard problems, because if you can go and solve the hard problems, you create something more valuable, because fewer and fewer people will have solved those problems because they're hard. So where a lot of people go left, you go right. People encounter the harder problems, many of them stop and try to start something new. because they don't want to do it. If you go do that, you become more valuable. You build something unique. That is why at our company, we said, we're going to go build a $10 million business, because that is really hard, so that then when we want to open more locations and bring on partners, we have created something incredibly valuable. And yes, it took us 5 or 6 years to solve systematically all of the problems to go from 3 to 10, but now we have 2 different companies trending for 10 million this year, and we have a roadmap to get there, which is a way better offer when we go start the next thing we start. So the longer you can stay in your lane, solving the harder problems, the more value you actually create for yourself. Hey, if you like this video, be sure to check out the 4 best home services to start in 2025.